Well, we got some things to do, so it's very possible you might have a little more time on your hands these days. So maybe now is the time to try something new, pick up a skill that you've always wanted to try but didn't have time for.
How about knitting?
How about
Apparently
it?
we can all do it. Knitting expert Julie Crawford joins us this morning. Good morning. How are you doing, Julie?
Good morning. I'm well, thanks. How are you guys doing?
We're doing well, thank you. I have to say, my grandmother loved to knit, and she tried to teach me as a kid. I have a theory that you have to have, like, a certain hand for it. Like, I don't know what it is, the dexterity or something. Am I wrong? Can anybody do it?
Anyone can do it.
Okay.
Anyone can do it. And actually, you're talking about something that is a really common beginner challenge, which is that death grip on the needles, trying to really control it a bit too much. That's a really common beginner challenge.
Okay, so let's talk about the beginners. What do you need to start things off?
You know, actually, it's really low tech and you don't need a lot. You need knitting needles and a ball of wool, any type of yarn that you want. What's great about this is that it's not a really expensive hobby to start. You can get really expensive materials, but if you're just starting, don't start with the high-end stuff. You do want to pick yarn that you really love in a color that speaks to you and feels really soft. So for the sample here, I'm using 100% baby alpaca yarn from We Are Knitters. And they actually sell, We Are Knitters sells a lot of knitting kits, which is a great way for beginners to start it as well. And you can start with easy projects that show you step-by-step how to do everything. You can pick the colors that you want. There's lots of knitting kits available for this sort of thing.
Okay, so how do you cast on and get that simple garter stitch? What is a garter stitch? I'm just reading the question.
Yeah, I was going to say,
don't know what I'm saying
you
right
sounded
now.
like you knew what you were talking about.
No idea.
Well, in terms of casting on, I'm going to have to turn my body a bit to do like a full demonstration.
Sure.
There's lots of different ways of doing it. And that's something I think that's important when you're sort of going into that beginner mindset. It's going to be a little weird looking at first. It's going to feel a little uncomfortable at first, but you know what? You're just going to keep at it and it gets easier and better all the time. So the easiest cast on, I'm just going to show you, here, let's hope we can see here. I'm just going to show you a little bit with my needles here. I do already have some knitting here. The easiest way to cast on is a backwards loop. And so all you're really doing here is you're just making a little loop. See, I'm just twisting that, putting it on, just like that. So that's the easiest way. So I can show you again, just like this. Make a little cross, over and down. The yarn here for the backwards loop cast on is always going to be on the bottom of the loop, not on the top. Otherwise, you're just wrapping yarn around a needle, and that's not going to help you much.
How long have you been knitting?
Oh my gosh. Well, it's funny you were talking about your grandmother. My grandmother taught me how to knit when I was probably about 8 years old. Wow. And I didn't knit for a long time. And then a long time ago in my 20s, I was living in Istanbul, and Turkish knitting is beautiful. And I thought, I remember how to knit. So I Googled some videos and I picked it back up again, and I haven't stopped.
So, yeah, I was going to say, knitting has this like old person, you know, I guess stereotype to it, right? In that association. Because I think, like, when I look at you, I don't think of you as the knitter, you know, but I know like my friends' kids are knitting and things like that because it is something that is a nice hobby to pick up on.
Well, it's funny you say that because knitting has changed so much in the last decade. There are so many really cool, interesting knitting patterns. Whatever kind of thing you want to knit, whatever kind of garment you want to knit, there's amazing patterns out there that you can do it all yourself. And it's not just like those grandma slippers that we're all really familiar with that look like some folded squares. You know, there's beautiful, modern, exciting stuff. There's sexy knits. There's all kinds of things out there now.
And it's such a sense of accomplishment when you've done something yourself and it's so beautiful and you can give it out as gifts. And it's very relaxing. You go into a Zen place, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the thing. I think when people are starting to learn how to knit, they end up sort of like really holding the needles tightly, and you're stressing yourself out like that, right? Yeah. You want to be able to just relax. And most of the control in knitting is actually going to be, when you're a beginner, that first stitch with your index finger in terms of just controlling the stitches this way. It's not about how tightly you've got them in your fists. It's about just more of the controlling the stitch with just your fingers rather than your whole hand, because you're going to give yourself a hand cramp that way. That's not going to help you.
Great tips. We are in it to knit it.
Oh,
Hey!
there it is. And you said you want to get relaxing and it's more zen-like. So this just makes sense. At Knitted Bliss, JC, is where you can find you. And weareknitters.ca. Thank you so much, Julie.
Knitters, not quitters. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
More Breakfast Television Canada to come right after this. Good morning, everybody. Too legit to knit.